So thank you for having me here today. It's great to be in front of all of you again. This time last year I was also addressing you, and obviously a lot has happened since then. So I want to start by giving thanks to our mothers and our foremothers and all the women who came before us, who have fought, some of them even laying down their lives so that we can be free. I want to say thank you to all my supporters who went out there and fought for me, people who stood next to me on the campaign trail, some people who would have never dreamed of supporting a Conservative candidate, would have never dreamed of voting for the Liberal Party, maybe still didn't vote for the Liberal Party, but nevertheless they went out there, they fought in their own names and in anonymous accounts on social media, rebutting all the lies that were being told, trying to argue the arguments that I had tried to prosecute, and because I had used intemperate language, got so vilified for. So I can't express to you how much that meant to me, particularly in some of the really, really dark moments. You know, my family was away, and I'm getting threats, and I had people within the party after me. I had people within my own campaign who were rats in the ranks, who I had to get rid of. I had the media doing what they were doing. I also very much had my supporters within the media, the media press in particular, a particular journalist who fought really, really hard, and I knew that you were out there fighting for me, but I know it became a very divisive subject, and it was seen as the culture war of the election. And some people tried to undermine that idea, oh, the culture war, what have you. But we as human beings have been fighting culture wars since time immemorial. We have fought religious wars. We continue to fight religious wars to this day all around the globe. And it is my view that the fight that we are in right now against gender identity ideology, and as we know, it's coming for women, it's coming for children, it's coming for families, it's seeking to undermine parental authority. We've got regulatory, institutional capture all the way to the Prime Minister's office, all the way down to local councils. It's captured our media, it's captured our sports organisations, it's capturing everything we touch in society. Health, education, language, provision of services, everything. And we know the damage that it is doing. It's doing damage to gay and lesbian people. It's doing damage to our ability to even acknowledge the reality of what's in front of us. And the worst part about all of this, that some of us here in this room have actually experienced ourselves, is that there are sanctions imposed to this. You know, there are people here who can't show their faces, who cannot openly speak their minds anymore. We know that there are people who are losing their jobs, they're stepping away from careers that they love. We are seeing women dragged through tribunal processes. We see the other side weaponise state apparatus, weaponise litigation to shut us up. We know that there are people in prison already around the world for this. We know that there are parents who have lost their children, who've lost their children to severe mental illness, who are now living on the streets. We know that there are families here in Australia who have lost custody of their children because they have refused to affirm their child. This is the religious war of our time. In my view, we are fighting against a very dark and insidious force that is seeking to just undermine everything that we hold dear, seeking to interfere with our thought processes, punish us for wrong thinking, just prevent us from doing our jobs, prevent us from having, just the ability to simply speak our minds. I mean, this morning was fantastic, and I did an outstanding job organising it. I've been coming here for 4 years, and the turnout today was magnificent. And for me, that was the first time the counter-protesters had actually come. And as we saw, we can see how impoverished their debate is. I stood there, and when they're shrieking about trans rights and human rights, I said, well, tell me what rights you don't have. You're human beings, aren't you human beings? Like, you're entitled to the same rights as the rest of it. So what rights don't you have? And of course they can't answer. They start waffling about something else, or they start screaming. And you know, we see them. When we drag them out into the light, when they're not hiding behind their anonymous accounts, when they're not trying to get us fired from our jobs, we see that we're fighting against. It's very frustrating when you see a room full of people such as yourselves. Many of you, like, we come from all faiths and none. We come from all different walks of life, sexualities, motherhood or marital status. We have a wealth of experience and knowledge here in this room. And to see what we're fighting against on the other side, I mean, this is why they want no debate. This is why they don't want us out there, because when society sees who they are, the whole thing falls over. So I also want to say thank you to Anna, because my whole journey with respect to fighting against the ideology, women's advocacy, the first time I came out in public was at Anna's event about 4 years ago. And the first time I ever spoke in public was at the rally. I think it was about 3 years ago. So it's been a bit of a wild ride for me, to say the least. But it was Anna who gave me my start. So thank you very much, Anna. And there's one thing that I'd like to address with respect to the movement, and it is something that I think some of us here in this room have experienced. I've experienced it, but it's something that causes me great distress, and it's to see the infighting that goes on within the movement. And I think because we are actually now starting to have some success, and because within our movement we have such diversity, we have true diversity, we have diversity of thought and opinion and lifestyles and politics and what have you, and it is that diversity which gives us our strength. When we look at the other side, they're like a hive mind. As we know, you're punished for wrong thing, you have to be on board, otherwise you are cast out as a heretic. And even when they cast you out, they still keep kicking you. But within the movement, I think, well, what unifies us is that we are women. We are biological females, and we can all see what is happening. And we can all see that women and girls have the right to sex-based rights. And the reason for that is because of our perceived, I would say, disability. The fact that we menstruate, the fact that we give birth, the fact that we breastfeed, the fact that we then go through menopause, the fact that when it comes to men, we are not as big, we are not as fast, we are not as strong, we are simply not as aggressive. So it makes us vulnerable. So we need to have laws in place to protect us from male aggression. We need to have laws in place to ensure that we are not subjected to discrimination because of the fact that it is our sex that bears the burden of human reproduction, and that we can contribute fully in public life, that we can participate fully, that we should not be able to not own property or pursue certain careers or hold office, that kind of thing. So we know that, we see that. And what we're seeing right now is that we've gotten complacent, I think, maybe in the first world. We're taking these rights for granted. We've gotten used to it. We've forgotten our history. We've forgotten what our foremothers and our sisters fought for back in the second wave, when we couldn't have a bank card, when we couldn't have a bank account, when we were excluded from jobs. And there was even a woman who explained to me recently, she was within her career path, she was excluded from training as an electrician because that was for the girls and she had to go work in the HR department. So we all see that. And I mean, with respect to us getting complacent about it, we are now seeing the legislature, we are seeing bureaucrats, we are seeing women who I would refer to as Aunt Lydias, the enforcers for the patriarchy. You know, we see them in Iran, the women who beat up and arrest other women for not wearing hijab. We have women like that who exist all through our society, and I think that's one way that they try to survive in patriarchy, but it means that they beat down on other women. So we have people like that. We have the men's rights activists who are out in force, who have seen that they are now applauded for beating down on the heretical turfs or the disobedient women. So we're seeing that. We're seeing these people absolutely welcome throwing out sex-based rights. replacing sex-based rights with these rights that are based on identity. And I mean, we should be all free to identify as whatever we want. Like, I mean, have at it. I actually don't care. But it should not be embedded into law and policy. And if you refuse to go along with someone's identity, you should not be arrested. You should not lose your job. You should not feel afraid for pointing out that what I see in front of me, dude in a dress, yeah, I'm sorry, I do not see a woman, and I am not going to bend the knee. I am not going to say you're a woman. And we've got people in this country trying to force women to do that. And that is why we are here in this room. We are setting aside our differences to focus on what we want to achieve. And I think that the wealth of diversity and the diversity of opinion is what makes us strong. So when I'm seeing people, attack other women because they don't like what they're doing or they don't agree with the way that they're doing their activism, I think we all need to remember that the vast majority of us on this side, we're not paid for this. We're all volunteers. It's like that quote in Erin Brockovich, it's time away from my kids, it's time away from my life. I don't get paid for any of this. I've been doing it for years. I did a law degree and I could have just said, you know what, I'm going to go and sign up with a nice firm and get paid lots of money and just live my life. But I saw what was happening, and I have 3 little girls, and the twins are 9 now, and I see that they're going to start blossoming into beautiful young women soon, and I have to hold the line, I have to be brave, but I am also terrified at the world that I'm going to be sending them out into. Are the rights that they are going to enjoy as women, are they going to have less rights than I did as a young woman? And that is what prompts me to just keep fighting. And fortunately, I have a partner who, when I'm off doing this, he just takes the reins at home. He is more hands-on than I am with raising the children, but he knows that fire in my belly and the fact that we have to defend our little girls. So I think for many of us, it's those types of reasons why we're fighting this. So if you see another woman doing something that you maybe don't agree with, that's fine, but no one's going to stop you from doing it the way that you want to do. No, you don't have to ask anyone for permission to do your activism. You need to do it the way that you think is right, but we need to look at what we're fighting against and stop fighting amongst ourselves, because that weakens us, and that's what the other side want us to do. I have shed tears over it personally. It does take a personal toll, particularly when I was out there in the election campaign and knowing that there were women within the movement, women that I'd interacted with or respected, and they disagreed with it. But instead of just saying, look, I disagree with that, personal attacks, it's not helpful. And I think that we're at a really critical point right now. Like, we can see how there's this groundswell behind us now. I'm a commentator on Sky, and I know some people have particular opinions about the Murdoch press, but their reach is phenomenal. They have 30 million unique views from the United States to the Sky News channel here in Australia every month. So when we have women who are brave enough to go on there, and some of them are ordinary women who've never had media training, but they're getting up there and they're having a say, and they're maybe from the left, so this is not their usual point. But those little snippets, they can go viral. So we need to support the women who are willing to put their heads above the parapet. We need to support the efforts of the women who are giving up, time away from their kids and their lives to help the movement. So we need to capitalise on this groundswell, and if we're seen to be infighting, which is never a good look, it just detracts from our main purpose. And I think with the groundswell, if they can see that we've got people from all walks of life jumping on board, trying to fight against this ideology, if they can see someone who's maybe put their head above the parapet and they can relate to that person because their particular faith or religion or sexuality or what have you, then it brings everybody else along with us. And that's what we need to do. We need to bring everyone with us. But when I go out there and I'm talking to the ordinary, not even talking to the ordinary people, just minding my own business in a country town, I'll have people come up to me all the time to say, keep going, I believe in you, whether it's at the supermarket or even a dad in the surf the other day. So people are seeing what's happening. And like even when I'm on Twitter, I might not get a lot of likes or interaction, but you'll see how many people, thank you Elon, who've actually seen your imprint. So you know that we are actually having an effect. So I think I feel more positive than I've ever felt in this movement. I think the other side are definitely going to start engaging in more drastic tactics. I think we're seeing that maybe with, say, the ABC, who's put out some articles lately that are just, swimming in the indoctrination. They're not even bothering to try and have any sort of balance in their reporting. So I think that with certain elements of this fight that we're in, things are going to get worse before they get better. But obviously we've got Kelly J. Keane coming out in March, and I think that's going to bring out a whole lot of other people that we might never have realised actually support the movement. Through what I've done, I've been invited to speak at all sorts of different groups, whether it's the Australian Monarchists, the Australian Jewish Association. I'm going to be speaking to a Christian group. There's a whole lot of people out there who are on side with us. So we need to bring them along. So let's just all do our activism in our own way and try not to attack those who are just like all of us. Everybody's life is hard and we're all doing our best every day. So let's just all try and stick together at this critical moment and just keep moving forward. So I've gone completely off script with my speech, so maybe I can just write an article and put it up, because I also don't want to run over time for the other speakers. Look, yeah, what I wanted to... so how do I get back on track now? So there is one other thing that I would like to mention, and that is we've got a really big fight coming up, and that's going to be in the courts. And that's going to be defeating the idea of gender identity ideology. So this is going to be a critical case for us, because if the laws that undermine sex-based rights, such as the Gender Identity Protection and the Sex Discrimination Act, are found to be unconstitutional or otherwise unlawful, this could render invalid laws in every state giving effect to gender identity to the extent to which they're inconsistent with the federal laws for sex-based rights. So it's going to be critical for us all to get behind it in any capacity that you can. Sal Grover, who is one of the respondents, so with her Giggle platform, if you follow Sal's story, she's been kicked off other crowdfunding platforms, so she's actually had to go and set up her own platform on her own secure server so they can't come after it. So we need to get behind that, and that'll be going live soon, so that'll be at gigglecrowdfunding.com perhaps. But this is really, really important, because if we can defeat gender identity ideology in the High Court, and that's the dream, and we are not going to get change from $500,000 on that one, then the whole edifice starts to crumble. And if we can knock it out of the federal legislation, we'll have to challenge all the state legislation as well. And then similar to what they're doing in the UK, like with Sex Matters, which is now going around to all the organisations and trying to unwind all the damage that's been done. So we're in a marathon, not a sprint. And it might take a generation or two, I hope not, but as we know with women's rights movements, we've been fighting this since the dawn of patriarchy 5,000 years ago, to be seen to be equal in public life. So I'm hoping that this will be done and dusted. I was hoping with respect to the sports that it'll be done by Brisbane, 2032 I think it is. My two little girls want to be Matildas, so I'm sort of hoping they won't have to play against a man. And hopefully the sport, the more that we see this ideology manifest in society and the more people that are impacted, so because it's one thing to talk about this in an abstract way and sound the warning bell, etc., but it's a very different thing when it's actually touching your life. And I think that unfortunately we are going to have to go through some more pain, and we're going to be getting more of these stories, more people coming to us. I get stories all the time from people saying, you know, for example, in aged care, women providing aged care, that's not a very well remunerated career. And the woman, she said that she was the main breadwinner, but she's having to provide intimate care for men who are now identifying as women and getting a thrill out of it. And she can't complain anymore. But if she does, she loses her job. So I think we're all familiar with these stories that are coming out, and it's just a complete encroachment on the dignity and safety of women and girls to move through the world. So I think I've probably said all that I want to say. With respect to the more academic speech that I was going to give, I'll write that up. But I did want to speak from the heart a bit more today. I felt so enthusiastic and just empowered seeing everyone there together today. It was so good to see the police on side. With Kelly J's, with the organising, I understand in the other cities, the police have been fantastic. So I feel like the tide has really, really turned. And thank you again for extending to me the honour and privilege of being able to address you all. And thank you so much for your time.